to Bay Area Psychology. According to statistics from the AARP Grandparents Information Center, over 3.7 million children in the United States live with their grandparent. Over 1.4 million of these children do so without their parents living with them. These figures represent a 40% increase in the past decade. Historically, grandparents stepped in to parent their grandchildren in cases of death or divorce and abandonment. Today's grandparents are just as likely to be taking on the parenting role due to dysfunctional parents who are unable or unwilling to care for their own children. So, in a time when they expected to be leading very different lives of retirement or travel or financial freedom, they find themselves enmeshed in diapers, PTA, Little League, the court system, social service departments, and mental health professionals. We are joined tonight by Linda Mullings of the Grandparent Caregiver Resource Center, sponsored by Catholic Charities, and Lorraine Evans, who is in fact a grandparent caregiver herself. And I want to thank you both for making the time to come down here. This is a very, as we can see by the numbers, a fast-growing issue. There's apparently a great number of grandparents who have stepped in or taking on the role of raising their grandchildren. When did you first form this center, this resource center?
Well, the Grandparent Caregiver Resource Center actually had its grand opening about 3 weeks ago. We had a tea in downtown San Jose on Grandparents' Day, a national holiday.
Oh, that's right.
To celebrate grandparent caregivers and the grand opening of the center. However, Catholic Charities has been very, very active as far as grandparent caregiver issues for the past 5 or 6 years.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's a large need. How did you get involved with the center, Ms. Evans?
The Grandparent Resource Center. I met Linda, and she talked me into coming to find out what they were doing. Being a nosy person, I had to go.
Oh, well, you know I'm nosy too. I always got to know, so I understand that. How old are your grandchildren?
Well, I have 4 grandchildren that I've raised. 2. One's in college, the other one's in Pennsylvania, but I now have 2, one 7 and one 9.
Okay.
I've had them last 4 years. The other 2 I had from 9 months and 3 years old.
Oh, so you really raised them to adulthood?
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you've launched them well. So
I hope so.
You must have done a good job, so now you have the other 2.
I have 2 with me now.
Yeah. Is that hard?
It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's tiring. It's rewarding. And it's my job.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what struck me when I was doing my research was that, you know, part of family members stepping in, I think it's something that family members feel is their job. You know, I mean, I know a woman I'm working with who has wound up with her 10-year-old niece that way. The niece's father died and the mother left, and she didn't want to send her to foster care, so she wound up raising her niece. You know, and that's probably a fairly common story, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very common story. Most of the grandparents that we see pretty much get the job by proxy. The main reason that most of them get that most of them become relative caregivers is usually due to drug abuse or a death in the family, a sickness or something like that. But overall the reason is due to a tragic situation. So a lot of times the grandparents don't expect that this will be their job, but they do take it on, some with more concern than others. But I must say that just about every grandparent that I talk to that's doing this, they wouldn't trade it for the world. They're very close and fond of their grandchildren.
Well, this is a good news.
Yes.
Let's take a look at some of the reasons. You just mentioned a few of them about why grandparents often are raising their grandchildren. We have our first graphic. As you mentioned, death of parents, divorce, substance abuse, incarceration. We just had a show a couple of weeks ago on children of incarcerated parents. Unwed mothers, unemployment, and again, illness of parent. Unemployment, I would guess, in this valley is another thing that's probably been showing up more, that people just financially are having a harder time taking care of their families.
Yes, that's true. That doesn't appear, though, to be the major reason. The major reason really does appear to be drug abuse.
Okay. So then we're also looking at the potential of some of the children that grandparents are raising. Are they themselves perhaps have fetal alcohol syndrome, or perhaps have been affected by having drugs or potentially violence in the family?
That's one of the issues that we deal with a lot at the Resource Center, is grandparents whose grandchildren are ADD or have emotional problems. Many of the children the grandparents didn't get when they were first born. Mrs. Evans got her granddaughter, who is a freshman at DePaul, when she was when she was an infant. So she had a lot to do with the development of the child. However, most of the grandparents get their grandchildren when they're around, they're about 4 or 5. It really depends on the situation. So when you get a child that late, or sometimes even they're teenagers when they get them. When they get them at that age, they don't know exactly what the child has been exposed to. Oftentimes it's violence, sometimes it's poverty, sometimes it's drug abuse, and the mother or the father were using drugs when the mother was pregnant with the child. But the situation's always different. And oftentimes it's just the tragic death of a parent, and you have a very depressed child that misses his or her parents.
I'm sure. Ms. Evans, I saw you nodding when we were talking about children being exposed to different things. Was that your children's experience?
The reason why I was shaking my head is because the first 2 children that I raised was by my daughter. Their father died. She got married again. She had 2 other children. They both were in foster care. One was in foster care for 4 years, the other was in for 2. These are girls that are 3 years apart in age, but in what they know, you'd be surprised, because when I got them, they were already set and their personalities made up. So what I have to do, and many, many other grandparents, is to let them know that they are wanted and that they are part of our household. And that's really hard, because you have to work at it every single day.
Well, I imagine that after being in foster care, that may be very hard for them to trust that this is not temporary.
Right.
Sort of like if they make you angry or they break the rules, somehow they'll have to leave.
They're afraid.
Yeah.
And they stay afraid. One of the things that I've found in the process of rearing these last 2 is you have to seek and find so many services that are not readily available to grandparents with children. The services that I had with my children, I could take them to the doctor or to the clinic or wherever. Now you have to have forms filled out. You have to have parents or the court's permission in order for you to take them to get the services that they need.
So that brings up an issue about custody then?
It certainly does.
Okay, so
And
are you
that's
the
not-
guardian?
Yes.
Okay.
That makes it another fight. Some children are left with no papers. So the grandparent has to start all over again with the social service, with the court system, before she's able to do for the child. And that's hard, really, really hard, because grandparents don't feel like fighting the system all over again. They did it once, but they do it
Well,
because they don't want to see the children in foster care and going back and forth to court. That's an ordeal within itself.
oh, I bet it is. It's a very intimidating situation to have
It
to go
is.
to court and
It is.
work your way through the legal mumbo jumbo and try to make sense of it. Yeah.
Not only that, Mary, if you can just visualize that you are a person who's worked all of your life and you're 65, 70 years old, you're already headed for retirement. You have a nice savings, and you're going to pack it up and move to Florida,
Okay.
for lack of
There's
a
a good
better,
grandparent choice.
right? For lack of a better word. And all of a sudden you have grandchildren that belong to you. that came one day after a phone rang at 3 in the morning, and they're here. You're not prepared for them. You want custody of them. You may have another parent fighting with you for custody of them, and you know that that's not the best situation for the children. And many grandparents that I've talked to virtually use up their life savings in attorney fees and things like that, trying to get custody or adopt their grandchildren. And so it's a real problem. However, once the grandparents get through the problem, they adjust pretty well. And those are the type of services that we have at the Grandparent Caregiver Resource Center. We have support groups for grandparents, and we have seminars for grandparents, and we have a warm line for them to call. We have a respite care program where they can get some much needed rest. And programs like that, we at the Resource Center, there's lots of information that they can come down, and Mrs. Evans will help them look it up and things like that.
So that's what strikes me, is how much the caregivers themselves need support.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was feeling that 3 o'clock in the morning phone call, and sort of your whole life in a matter of a few hours gets turned upside down. You know, in your experience, how long do you think, Ms. Evans, that adjustment period is, where people come to terms with that?
Are you talking about the children or the
The
grandparents?
grandparent.
That's hard. It's hard to say. I know some grandparents that have had their children for 4 years and they're still angry.
Okay.
And others who have them for maybe a year or a year and a half, and they go for counseling.
Okay, and then they get some help.
And then they get some help from somewhere else. It's hard to say how long it is.
It probably, I would guess, depends too on how unexpected it is. Let's take a break, and we'll come back to that. Stay with us. When we return, we'll learn more about the needs of grandparents. Welcome back.